and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going through 10 of my god tier romantasy reads that I think you should be prioritizing reading if you haven't already in 2026. This is my opinion. There might be books that I haven't included that you think are an absolute god tier but people should have read by now, and I encourage you to leave those books in the comments because I am always up for stacking out my TBR. And there might be books in this list that you hated, and that is fine. That is why it's good that we all like different things. These are my god tier reads, and I've actually got 9 books for you and then one that I haven't read yet but I think is going to be in this list in the future. So here are 10 or 9, I guess, books that I have loved that I think you would love as well. And each of these has a different reason for being on this list. Some of them it is very timely if you read them now. Some of them I think you're just missing out on if you're not reading them when they release. I won't give you a rating for each of these books. I have loved every single one of these. Assume they're all 5 or 6 star reads for me. Look, I get overwhelmed. There are so many romantasy books on the market and I feel like every month that passes there just becomes more and more that I need to add to my TBR list. So if you've liked similar books to me before, hopefully this list will help you focus in, prioritize and narrow down some books that you might want to be picking up. These might be books that you already have on your shelf that you've been putting off, and hopefully this video is the push you need to get them into your TBR for the month. Before I kick off, make sure you're liking this video. It really helps me out, guys. And so many of you who watch these aren't subscribed. Why not? Hit the subscribe button as well. It's free. But without further ado, let's dive into the books. I'm starting off with a book that at the time that I'm filming this is not released. I don't know if you're going to watch this before or after it's released. It's going to be on the cusp because it's coming out really soon. And I'm starting with this one because I think it is my book of the year. I know we're only in March, bear with me. At least it's March at the time I'm filming this. You might be watching this in April. I don't know. Hello, the future. The book is Starside by Alex Astor. Now, I had never read anything by Alex Astor. I haven't read Lightlark. I haven't read her contemporary. I had read nothing. I'm very interested in Lightlark. It's been on my TBR for a while. For some reason, I chose to pick this one up first. Actually, it's not for some reason. This one's her adult fantasy romance debut, and I do usually read more in the adult genre than I do in YA, which Lightlark is. And I was very, very honoured to receive one of the UK proofs of this beautiful book as well. So that's why I picked it up first. It wasn't a for some reason. It was. It's more for some reason I haven't read Lightlark yet, but now after reading this, I definitely want to. This was a god tier read. I'm predicting, I'm recording this on the 15th of March, the book is not out yet. I'm predicting that this is going to be the next BookTok sensation, Booktube sensation, Bookstagram sensation. I just think she's going to be sensational. This, for me, if I had to compare this to 2 things, it was like Quicksilver and Shield of Sparrows, which were 2 of my favourite books from last year. This was like a very juicy combination of the 2, but like so utterly unique in its own thing. Like I struggle to explain how I feel about this book. I had such a great time with this. It's very bold for me to say this is my book of the year in March, and I may be proven wrong. There might be something that comes along that is better than this. I've got like 10 months of the year to go. However, I'm struggling to see what could beat this. I'm struggling to feel that I'm going to find a book that will be better than this one. I really enjoyed the way this has like magic in weapons and that magic is like earned and not inherited. I loved the scrappiness and grittiness of our female main character in this. The world is bleak. The world is gritty. You know I love a gritty, dark, moody, atmospheric, bleak world. There was something about the actual side of Starside as well that felt surreal and magical, and I felt like I was feeling how weird it was through the eyes of our narrator. Parts of the world almost felt slightly dystopian, like there was something going on in Starside that was not quite right. And like the way Alex did that through like, I'm enjoying so much at the minute actually fantasy books are including actual monsters, like animalistic monsters, and this has that. There's this deer at one point that is more ferocious than a deer ever should be. The main characters in this book really hate each other. Now, I don't use enemies to lovers lightly, usually. I always make sure they are actually like enemies to lovers and not a subgenre of that, like annoyances to lovers, or they just don't like each other. This one, they are enemies. I'm talking like would kill each other, would leave each other for dead, would let their other enemies slay each other. I think for the majority of, in fact, the entirety of this book, they're enemies. All of it. They hate each other. They hurt each other. They are angry at each other. They have moments, and like those moments of sensitivity then just hit so much harder. One of the best fantasy romance book I think I've read just in the past 5 years. If you can't tell, I'm really overwhelmed by my enjoyment of this. I'm really struggling to put into words why I think you should read this, but I just think you should. In a market of romantasy that often gets labelled as like things feeling too similar, feeling the same, or like the same kind of tropes, this really, really stood out to me in the same way that Shield of Sparrows did. It feels unique, the world feels fresh, the character relationship feels fresh. I feel like sometimes we say enemies to lovers all the time. This is true enemies. Like, as I said, they would kill each other. It has hidden identities, hidden abilities, the world, the magic system, just everything felt so new. So if you are reading a lot of Romantasy, I'd say it's probably 80 to 90% of what I read in a year is Romantasy, and even I can see where there are sometimes too many similarities or some things that feel samey. This is not going to do that for you. This is going to feel brand new, super fresh, unlike anything else you've read. So whilst I can compare this to some things, it's not because they feel super similar. I like the element of animals in this in the same way I enjoy the element of animals in Shield of Sparrows. Similarly, in Shield of Sparrows, I love the like traveling through a landscape. I love that in this too. Are the landscapes the same? No. Is the journey the same? No. Is the purpose of the journey the same? No. Is there any points that feel the same? No. There is just elements of the story that I think were really reminiscent of some of my favourite books. Just in a way that helped me categorise this amongst some of my top reads. And I literally finished this a few weeks ago. Some of the books on this list have been my favourites for years. This is a newcomer, but she is starting in a strong position. I don't know when you're going to be watching this. I'm bulk filming a lot at the moment. Due to me being out in April quite a bit. So it might be that you see this video after the book's released, but either way, if the book isn't out yet, go and pre-order it. If the book is out yet, go and pick up a copy. I know I'm probably going to get some questions, so this is the US Deluxe edition. I was very, very lucky, and Alex Astor actually sent me this copy. If you're in the UK, I would check out Blackwell's for this. I'm not sure where else might do this edition. There was a Waterstones exclusive that I've got pre-ordered. I don't know if that one's sold out. It might be, but keep an eye out closer to release day because sometimes people's orders get cancelled and then they put some stock back up. If you're in the US, they also have like a Target edition, I think, a Walmart edition. There's a couple of different editions in the US. And if you're subscribed to a certain adult subscription box, we might see a special edition of this coming really soon. Next up is a book that is not new, but it is new to me. That is the Lady of Darkness series by Melissa K. Roharick. I feel a bit like a hypocrite because it took me so long to pick up this series and read it. I've had this on my TBR for at least 2 years, 2 full years, maybe even 3 years. However, that being said, this is the perfect time to pick up this series, and let me tell you why. I have read this entire series this year, so that is all 5 books of the series plus the 2 novellas. And I loved this series. It was a 5-star series for me. Even though I gave some of the books individually in the series a 4-star, I think overall it was so strong. And this is going to be one for all of the fans of Throne of Glass. Now, I'll talk more about the series in a moment, but actually I think the reason that you should be prioritising reading this for 2026 is because the author actually has a brand new series launching in the same universe, world. And there is another series that follows this that you should probably read before that one as well, which I don't know if you can see it next to me, is the Legacy series. So the series that starts with Reign of Shadows and Endings by Melissa K. Roharick. So this year is the perfect time to prioritise reading one of my favourite series of the year, Lady of Darkness, and then also I will be prioritising reading the Legacy series to get that read so I can catch up in time for the author's new release, which is the first book in the Avon Leia series. Now, the series is going to be perfect for anybody who likes their more high epic fantasy. If you like something to really get your teeth into, lots of side characters, lots of like subplots and lots of different stories to follow, lots of like clashing motivations, really juicy romance. Quite complex romance, but very juicy romance. Again, more complex magic systems, world, hidden identities, like a really, really good found family vibe in this one as well, actually. And most of the characters are on that morally grey scale. So keeping track of people's conflicting interests and motivations and how they move across that, and like who is the bad guy, who do we not like in this book, can be a little bit to get your head around. But I personally love series like this. I want to take the time to learn all of these characters and all of their stories and all of their motivations and everything that they want from life. I want to know. I want to know how the politics is different in each court, and I want to know why there are certain pressures on one king and not another. Like, that is all the information I love about a fantasy book when it is incredibly well built out. So this one is definitely more exposition-y than some of the other books on this list. But if that sounds like a bit of you, then I would absolutely recommend picking this one up, and I would prioritise reading it sooner rather than later. To my knowledge, the 3 series I've spoke about by this author are all connected, and I believe the recommended reading order is the entirety of Lady of Darkness first, then the Legacy series, which is the Reign of Shadows and Endings series, in case you know it by a different name. And then I believe the new one is called Tortured Souls. I will be picking up a copy of that at a Polycon, so keep an eye out on my channel. I've definitely spoke about it before, and I'll be talking about it in the future because I'm hoping to read it this year too. So if, like me, you've been putting off the Lady of Darkness series, don't do it anymore. Get it read this year. It is very important that you do so. But also, I put this off because I was kind of scared about it. Actually, the reason I was drawn to this series is because so many people had said how similar it was to Throne of Glass, and I can absolutely echo that. It is similar in tone and vibe without being similar in plot and story. So you're not going to read this and go, I've read this before, but if you've been yearning for something to give you the same vibes you got the first time you read Throne of Glass and you were meeting all these different characters and learning all their secrets, then this could be your cup of tea. Next up is a series that I haven't spoke about in quite some time. When I first read this, I didn't shut up about it. I was obsessed with this and I still am. I'm looking forward to giving this a reread. That is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I know many of you will have read this, but I also feel like so many people have come into reading in the past year, maybe 18 months, potentially missed all the initial hype with this one, and we've been waiting a while for book 2. It did get pushed back. However, book 2's release is on the horizon, and I feel like some people are going to be like, oh, why is everybody losing their mind over the Ballad of Fallen Dragons? Like, why have I never heard of When the Moon Hatched? Well, now you have. I'm telling you about it, just in case you hadn't heard. When the Moon Hatched is actually my preferred dragon romantasy series over, for example, Fourth Wing. This and Briar Bolin's Bloodwing Academy are probably my 2 go-to recommendations for dragon fantasy. I did enjoy Fourth Wing, don't get me wrong. I just enjoyed this one a bit more. Now, what I wasn't expecting from this, and I went in with the expectations that it might feel a bit samey. There was a lot of dragon romantasy coming out at the same time as this. So I was a little cautious going into this, and also I had not really read anything from Sarah A. Parker. I'd read To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, but never finished the series because it got pulled and then went through traditional publishing. So I've now got those books to read again. But this one, so completely different to Bleed a Crystal Bloom. I enjoyed that one. I loved this one. I wasn't expecting this to have such deep lore around the dragons. I wasn't expecting these dragons to be so unique and so well crafted. These expectations were based on nothing, by the way, except for there was just lots of dragon fantasy romance hitting the market at the time, and it felt like a bit of a trend. And everyone was kicking off about this one, and I was like, I'm gonna go and read it because everybody's super hyped about it. But I was maybe just a bit nervous that it wasn't going to live up to those high expectations. It absolutely did. Again, one of my favourite things is the contrast of this romance and this like beautiful magic alongside a darker, grittier world. That surprised me about this one. It does really have a dark undertone to a lot of the story. There is a real grit in our characters. There's a real grittiness to the world. It's slightly gory at times and quite an atmospheric setting, particularly the first section of the book when we're following the female main character Rave, like through the streets of this city. It was so visual, like reading this, it was so excellently described, and I feel like this has fallen off people's radars a little bit. With book 2 right around the corner, I am very much looking forward to doing a reread of When the Moon Hatched. I'm kind of scared of book 2. I don't know why, it's been so long. I think I'm apprehensive in the same way I was apprehensive going into this, where I don't really know what to expect. But this one I rated 5 stars and I absolutely loved it. If you have read Fourth Wing and you have read like Bloodwing and a lot of the other dragon fantasy romance, if dragons are really your cup of tea, then you should have already read this one. However, if you have never read a dragon fantasy romance, I would still highly recommend this one to you. I think this is a good first introduction. And I say that because it doesn't assume you have any prior knowledge about like the fantasy dragon. It is very much its own version of the fantasy dragon. So you don't need to understand too much about like how they work, because a lot of the world building and the dragon building and the character building around the dragons, the lore around the dragons is new and is fresh and is unlike anything I've ever read. That's a bit of a theme with these lists. This is like 10 romantasy books that feel very unique in a market where there might be some oversaturation going on. But I love this one, and I hope you do too. Whilst we're chatting about books I think have fallen off people's radars or books that are potentially underrated, let me introduce you to The Temptation of Magic by Megan Scott. This one is an urban, dark academia fantasy romance, and oh my gosh, this was my favourite book of the year in 2024 when it released. Here we are in 2026 with the second book, which is called A Masterpiece in Blood, right around the corner. Again, if you've come into reading recently or you never got around to this one when it first released, please pick up this book. I can only say such positive things about this one. I love the dark academia and fantasy mix. A lot of my favourite fantasy books at the moment do have that combination. This lit something within my Twilight loving 13-year-old heart, and I haven't read urban fantasy really in a long time before I picked up this one. There's more and more urban fantasy hitting the market, I think now, or maybe I'm just more aware of it because it's something I've started to get back into. But when I was in my teens, when I really found my love of reading, when I was reading like The Hunger Games, Divergent, the Shadowhunters series, Matched by Ali Condé, The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, all of that was very urban fantasy, urban sci-fi, urban dystopian, like all very urban speculative fiction space. I don't know why I've moved away from that as an adult and really just been interested in, I never know how to describe like the other kind of fantasy with like knights and swords and no technology, but that, I don't know why I've moved more into that space. I love both, I really do, but I definitely read, the majority of the fantasy I read is that type rather than urban. And I really appreciated the more urban setting of this. I feel like a lot of urban fantasies, and in fact one I've got coming up on this list, are more city based. I believe this one is set at a university and kind of like a sleepy cove town in Cornwall, which I thought again was a very unique setting, and I really enjoy this. Some more things I loved about this: the supernatural types in this were very unique. The main character is an Imperial, which I think is something that's unique to this. It's not a supernatural archetype that I have come across before. This one is a YA, but there is definitely some like heat and steam in the romance. I'd recommend this for kind of readers 16 plus, and I think book 2 might have some spice. I will have to wait and see. I love the forbidden element of the romance. I love that like steam and yearning. Like nothing does yearning like a YA fantasy romance book. I love the urban setting. I love the elements of art history that are woven into the story, as the main character Nicole is a student of art history. I love the mystery around like the Order of Imperials and what happened to her mother. There is just such good stuff in this, and I think it's so underhyped. I think it's so underrated. Not enough people have read this book. If you too were like a supernatural, twilighty, Wolves of Mercy Falls kind of girly, The Temptation of Magic might be right up your alley. In fact, I think it will. I think it's up everybody's alley. I don't think there's anybody out there that would dislike this book. Please read the book. I love the book. The book needs to be read by more people. It needs to be enjoyed by as many people as possible, particularly because book 2 is right around the corner, as I said. So perfect time to pick this up. You should be prioritizing picking this up, particularly if you like your dark academia, dark fantasy vibes. Then prioritize picking this up in 2026, particularly because book 2 is coming out, and then you can get this read and then dive straight into book 2. I know this one might have been on your TBR for a while. You might have picked this up when it first came out and been apprehensive to start it with the rest of the series not being out, but I promise you, you are missing out with this one. What I could give to read this again for the first time. As I mentioned, some of these feel more pressing because like the second book is about to come out, like it was with When the Moon Hatched and The Temptation of Magic. Some are just on here because I think you're missing out if you're not reading them. This is both. This one is absolutely both, but also if you're looking for a recommendation that you've maybe not had before, you've maybe never heard of, you might not have it on your shelf, you're looking for something to get for yourself, you might have a lot of these big ones pre-ordered, you might already know about these. Please, 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 please pick up a copy of The Temptation of Magic. It is so good. It's so good. And I really wish more people were banging on about this one. Next up is a book I loved and have been obsessed over, but haven't really spoke about a lot, and that's because I think everybody else also loved it and was also obsessed over it, so I haven't felt the need to talk about how much I loved and obsessed over it. The book is Diabound by Sable Sorensen. You've read this one, right? You've read it. I'm sure you've read it. You haven't. See, that's a problem we're going to have to fix. This was originally independently released. I heard great things about it. The author sent me an indie copy as a review copy, like way back, and then a week later, the thing got pulled. It then got traditionally published by Wayward, and that is when I managed to read the book. I think if you are a fan of Fourth Wing, particularly the Fourth Wing girlies I'm talking to, you need to pick up a copy of Diabound and prioritise getting this read. And again, this is another one where book 2 is coming out this year, so book 2 Furybound is out in the next couple of months. I think it's pretty soon, actually. I had a really good time with this one. I really enjoyed it. I think I didn't talk about it too much last year because there was 2 Wolf books that I read back to back. There was Diabound and then The Wolf King, and they are completely separate books because I think in my brain they were both like the Wolf books. I was talking a lot about The Wolf King because The Night Prince was coming out and I was really enjoying that, and I feel like I kind of neglected to talk about Diabound as much as I should. This is a beautiful Fairy Loot copy, just as a heads up, because I know some people are going to ask. This isn't available anymore, but definitely keep an eye out on their trove sales. Something that's coming out of the fantasy books I love a lot over the past year or two is Deadly Trials competitions, like having to, it's the same with Starside actually and Fourth Wing, like having to compete for your place in something, and like that kind of everyone being your friends but also being at your throat and against you. I have really been enjoying that as like this odd competition trope in fantasy at the moment. Again, I don't know if it's that like Hunger Games lover inside of me waking up and going, what do you mean only one of them's going to survive? And that's not really what this is, but like the element of competition with your peers and the element of like deadly circumstances, like every angle, you know, your enemies want to kill you, your friends want to kill you, the system wants to kill you, everybody wants to kill you, like is in this. And I've been really, really enjoying a lot of books that have that kind of vibe with it. I also really enjoyed the bounding of the direwolves. I am a big From Blood and Ash fan. Now, in From Blood and Ash, they have woven that are bound sometimes to some of the other main characters, and they have like a reciprocal bond. So anything that can like remind me of that is one of my favourite parts of that story. It actually gets a 5 stars in my book. But it also kind of reminds me, again, a little bit, I feel like I've been in this vampires and werewolves thing all last year. I like a wolf shifter, don't get me wrong, but this is not a wolf shifter. This is human characters and they're bonded direwolves. So in the same way we have Fourth Wing, we have Violet, and then we have like Ten and then Dana. This is a similar situation, except we have our main character and a direwolf. And a hot guy and his hot direwolf as well. This is a FOMO one. I think, yes, the second book is coming out, but I do think you're getting FOMO if you're not reading this. This is one of those series at the moment that everybody's reading, everybody's really enjoying, lots of book clubs are talking about, lots of friendship groups are talking about, and I just think if you're sat there with a wall of an overwhelming Romantasy TBR, if this is on there, this is a pretty safe bet. I would pull this one out. There is lots and lots of good things in this. It wasn't my favourite one of this list by any stretch of the imagination, but I did have a good time with this one. I did really enjoy it, and lots of my friends have enjoyed it as well. So actually something that's been really fun is like chatting about this book, chatting about my theories for book 2, getting ready for book 2 to come out. And I think when book 2 comes out, all of the bookish social media is going to lose their minds. So if you want to be involved in the collective losing of minds, get this one read ASAP. This next one also fits into that FOMO category. This was so incredibly good. This is definitely going to be in my top 10 books of the year. The book is Half City by Kate Golden. I'm definitely in my urban fantasy era. I don't know what it is. It feels like me at 15 pretending to be like cosplaying Clary and having all the Shadowhunters books. Like, that's where I'm getting back into that mind space again. I think it's a thanks of Temptation of Magic a few years ago, Half City. I also recently read Gravewood, which is a bit urban fantasy-esque. There's quite a lot of urban fantasy books I've been reading at the moment. This has been one of my favourites. Half City is urban fantasy, but it's also got that dark academia element. As I said, that is something that I really value in balancing alongside a fantasy. This one I'm just straight up describing as Shadowhunters, but adult. This one I'm going to recommend as straight up spicy Shadowhunters vibes urban fantasy. This has an academia setting, which I really loved, but it's got that like action, that city urban setting, that public transport, but there's demons on the subway kind of vibes. And honestly, that sold it to me. As soon as I saw this, I was like, this is Shadowhunters, but spicy and more academic. Honestly, as a former, like, I still like Shadowhunters. I don't think I'm gonna reread it. I read it a lot when I was younger. It was my favourite series when I was like 15. As a former Shadowhunters girly, I'm still probably a Shadowhunters girly at heart. This really ticked all of the boxes. And this came out in January or February this year. So this one is definitely already out, but it is a new release. I'm seeing lots of early hype about this one. And I think if you don't want to get left behind with this one, especially when like book 2 comes out, this is going to be a trilogy. So when book 2 hype starts happening and they start talking about like special editions for book 2 and pre-ordering book 2, you want to know whether you like the book or not. I would recommend you give this a read as soon as you can, but definitely prioritise it for 2026 whilst it's still in its first release year. I'd also recommend this if you like demon daddies. I have a tip from a friend, which is not to listen to the audiobook. I think the audiobook is good. I think it's well done. I have heard critique that the audiobook maybe spoils some plot points moving forward. They are plot points that I could have spotted reading this book, but I know some people have critiqued that there's something involved in the audiobook that does spoil that. So unless you definitely want to or definitely have to listen on an audiobook, I'd maybe recommend not doing so, but the book was really good. I would really recommend you read it in whatever format you feel most comfortable with. And again, I'm going to get questions. This is the beautiful Fairy Loot edition, but the standard copy is also gorgeous. Particularly if you want like leather-clad, high heel wearing, dagger wielding queens. I don't know. She's just like this hot lady with daggers and the leather. Maybe, look, hey, everyone in this book, super hot. Every element of hot, so much hotness is pumped into this. It's just fantastic. I spoke about this one earlier in conjunction with another book on this list and said that it really reminded me of this. This is another one that is a mix of FOMO, but also book 2 is coming out really soon, and that is Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. Book 2, Rights of the Starling, is out literally, I want to say by the time you watch this in a couple of weeks, maybe a month. This one is really actually quite dark. This is a darker fantasy. The things I loved about this, I recapped this earlier, but just to clarify, I felt this story style was so unique because there was a threat from real monsters. Now, often in fantasy books, or I find maybe just in the fantasy books I'm reading, the threat is from other humans, other supernaturals that are like operating on the same plane, but there's just something about these uncontrollable, bloodthirsty animals, this like sickness that is turning all of these terrifying creatures into just hungry killers. That's all they want to do is kill things. I found terrifying. I was reading this book worried at any point that a wolf was going to jump out of a wood somewhere and rip her head off. Like, I have genuinely never had my heart pounding so fast, because humans can be predictable, right? Or like people with human traits, like supernaturals, whether it's fae or elf or whatever, vampires can be predictable. They often have a motivation. They often have something that they want to achieve. These animals just want to kill. Now, is the eventual evil in this going to be some kind of controlling humanoid, whether that be, you know, a fae or a witch or whatever? Yes, probably. But there was just something so unique about the setup of this, the level of threat that ran throughout the entire thing. Really love the dynamic of our main 2 characters. Oh, I just realised it's got very beautiful artwork underneath. Sorry, now you're going to want to know what it does. Oh, look at it's like the forest. Anyway, I also thought the setting in this one was absolutely fantastic. We visit so many different locations. We go on a real journey with our female main character in this one as she's being kind of escorted to her final destination. They go through so many different locations and they just felt so, again, I've said this a bajillion times in the video, fresh, unique, I don't know. When I initially read ACOTAR, one of my favourite things about the fantasy elements of that was like stepping between the courts and seeing how very different they were from each other. This kind of has that same vibe. There's one location in particular where they've had to build their like houses as huts in the treetops, specifically because of like the animals in the area that are super dangerous, that prowl at night but that can't get up to their huts. There's actually artwork in the front of this book with that exact thing, so clearly some artist somewhere has thought the same thing about like how well this was depicted, how well I could picture this in my mind. I don't know if it comes from the fact that Daphne Perry also writes really fantastic romantic suspense that I like, but there was a real element of thrill and suspense to this, a real energy that carried that plot forward. The romance is great in this one as well, but this is one I would definitely recommend if you're not usually a fantasy romance fan, but you like your fantasy with a really strong plot. I would still recommend this one to you. There were moments in this that were just so unexpected and so shocking. I was sobbing at one part in particular. Just the real level of threat and danger in this one was well done. It was so well done, and I can't really think of many other fantasy books that have genuinely had my heart pounding in like, what is going to happen to this main character? Like someone's going to jump out of a thing and slash her to death at any point. It almost felt like a horror film. Like watching this, my heart was going, I was sweating, I was crying at one point. Like it was emotionally a ride, but I loved it. If I could describe to you like fantasy suspense, this is kind of where we would sit. And as I mentioned, book 2, Rights of the Starling, is coming out really soon, so definitely be getting your hands on a copy of that one too. If you're in the UK as well, they're going to stop printing the first book pretty soon as they start shifting over to paperback. So I would grab a hardback of book 1 while you can, and then you can get your matching hardback of book 2 when it releases really soon. Please read this one. I need someone to talk to about this one. And again, this is one I heard a lot about when it first released, but then I haven't heard much about since, so I do fear this has fallen off people's radar. So if you originally took note of this when it first came out, you put it on a TBR, you bought a copy, whatever it was you did with that information, I need you to now go and follow through on that and go and pick up the book and read it and enjoy it, and then you can join me on my journey through book 2. I don't know why it's gone a little bit quiet about you, because you are phenomenal. Definitely one more people need to be prioritising reading in 2026. Up next is one for people that like to read series when they're finished but still like to read books as they're very popular and releasing and coming out, and they like joining the hype train online. That is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. Also for you, if you prefer your more subtle romances in fantasy and you prefer a bit of wacky, a bit of weird, some atmospheric, some like slightly gothic tones in your fantasy, this one absolutely ticks all of those boxes, and book 2, The Knave and the Moon, is coming out pretty soon. I don't actually know at what point it's coming out this year, but I think it is coming out soon. Now, I believe this is going to be a duology. That is entirely an assumption. Somebody could correct me in the comments and tell me this is going to be a trilogy, but I'm pretty convinced, based on nothing other than her other series was a duology and what I know about this one, that it's going to be just the 2 books. So if you do like to wait for series to be finished until you pick them up, then you're going to be able to devour this entire duology this year. I would absolutely recommend picking this up, especially if you also care about like matching series. Book 1 in its normal hardback, this is the Fairy Loot edition, in its normal hardback, will move to paperback soon, so if you want them to match, also a good time to pick it up. But I also just think like Rachel Gillig is such a standout author for me, has easily become one of my auto by authors, and she only has 3 books out currently. There is just such a like stamp on Rachel Gillig's writing. It is so individual. I feel like I could read a couple of chapters from a book not knowing what it was and would be able to tell from the weirdness whether it was Rachel Gillig or not. And this story just, as I've said for a lot of the things on this list, feels so unlike anything else. The things I would compare the writing style to, I think if you enjoy Ava Reid as an author, I think you would like Rachel Gillig. Maybe Adeline Grace as well. I think if you like Adeline Grace, or Kaylee Reid from The Sacred Space Between. Sacred Space Between and The Night and the Moth for me both came out last year and both had very similar tones and vibes. So if you like any of those things, then I think you would love this. But I'm also recommending this one as one to prioritise because I do want more people talking about this book. One Dark Window, when it first released, was quite popular, but it's definitely grown in popularity as the years have gone on, and I think this series might do the same. And again, I think if you're looking at that overwhelming TBR and you're thinking, what can I read that's really going to hook me, that's going to feel different, that's going to stay with me, whose characters are so unique, whose motivations are so weird, wacky and wonderful. Like, what is going to stick with me this year? What am I going to get to the end of the year and go, God, I'm glad I read that when I did? I think it's going to be this one. So much hype is already online about book 2, and I think I'm going to love it. I think book 2 is going to definitely be in my top 10 books of this year. So if for no other reason, read this just so that when we get to the year and I fill my top 10 books of the year, you know what I'm going on about. The Night and the Moth is another one that I would recommend to people that like fantasy or might like some fantasy fantasy romance, but like a more subtle romance element in the story. Whilst romance plays a part in this, there's particularly like no spice in this, for example. Like it is definitely more focused on telling that story, those motivations, atmosphere, all of that kind of stuff in the book, rather than any kind of explicitness or sauciness. Which, hey, I love a bit of sauciness. It's just not in this book, and I know some people don't like reading that kind of thing, so if you don't like reading that, then this one could be good for you. That doesn't mean that there isn't adult scenarios in this. There totally is, but they're not like descriptive spicy scene. Do you know what I mean? Okay, good. I'm glad we're all on the same page. Let me put this down and let's look at the last book of the ones that I've read. Up next is a book you all saw coming. There is lots of reasons you should be reading this year. The new book is coming out soon. It is fantastic. I think you're going to have FOMO. But honestly, I'm just saying this one because any opportunity I can have to tell you to read this one, I'm going to take it. The book is Quicksilver by Kelly Hart. Quicksilver by Kelly Hart took me by surprise. This is one that I deprioritized for so long. I almost read it when it was indie and then I didn't. And then I got the proof copy and then I didn't get around to it and then it released and then I didn't get around to it. What was I waiting for? Learn from my mistake. I could have spent a year laughing and loving these characters. I didn't. I wasted a year that I could have been thinking about Carrie Swift. A whole year where I could have been smiling and cackling at Carrie Swift calling one of his swords Simon. This for me has that balance that I love in Blood and Steel, which is probably my favourite series of all time by Helen Scheurer, which is that like fantasy, dark, gritty, romance, seriousness, war swords, like that I love in Blood and Steel. It has it in here. But then both series also have like a comic relief character. So in Blood and Steel, it's Cal and Kip. Love them all over it. In this, it's Carrie Swift. And same effect, like it just really builds this out into something that just goes right into the god tier reads for me. Not only is this a great fantasy, it's got a great world, it's got vampires, which I love, it's got fae, which I love, it's got this cool magic system that I've not really read anything like before with this controlling of the Quicksilver. I love the main character, I love how scrappy she is, I love the romance between the two, and again, this one's more like annoyances to lovers rather than any specific enemies to lovers. However, it's also got real heart and real humour, and I was hooked. I was bought in. I sold. If you haven't read Quicksilver yet, I really think you should do. You're missing out on one of my favourite fantasy books of all time, but you're also missing out on the hype. I remember I was missing out on the hype when Brimstone came out, so that was book 2. So I actually didn't read this until Brimstone was already out, and then I was like, right, I've put it off long enough. Everyone's banging on about Brimstone now. I've got to read it. I've got the FOMO. I need to know what the hype's about. What's going on? Like, why is everybody so excited? I can completely see now, and I kind of regret leaving this so long. Like, why did I put this off? There are so many, like, Kelly Hart events and gorgeous artwork I could have enjoyed, and I just haven't because I've been scrolling and going, oh, that's Quicksilver, cool, I haven't read it yet. Like, don't make the mistake I did. Don't put this off any longer. If you're scared of it, I honestly, I'm going to level with you here. I was scared that this was going to be overrated. I was scared that it was like too popular, which I'm never usually like that. But I was apprehensive because everybody seemed to be loving this. I was a little bit scared of her. I was like, I've got mega high expectations. What if she doesn't live up to them? But she did. She did. And then some. I really loved this. If you haven't read it yet, take this as your sign. Go and pick up the book. And then the last book, the 10th book on this list, is not a book that I have actually read yet. However, it is coming out very soon. By the time you watch this, it might actually already be out because it is coming out in April. I'm not sure which date in April. If I had to guess, which fantasy book was I thinking was going to be the next one to blow up, like the next one to get huge on all of the bookish social media platforms, which was the next one we were going to start seeing all the character art for, having all the conversations about, spinning all of our theories about, this would be where I would put my money. And the book is Riftborn by Greenwich and Lennox. I actually have an indie copy here, just in case you recognise it by this cover, but this is the proof copy. I have seen the cover for the new UK hardback. I think it's very reminiscent of the original, but it is different. Based on nothing but vibes and the blurb of the book and like everything I know about it and all the bits and bobs I've seen over the years, I think this book is going to consume me. I think this is going to be my every waking thought. I am genuinely anticipating putting this in my top 10 books of the year. I haven't read a single page yet. If I feel this strongly about how this book is going to be great, imagine how I'm going to feel when I've read it. Please, please, please live up to my expectations. I think you're going to be phenomenal. I'm particularly looking forward to the magic system in this one. I've heard the magic system in the world is really, really impeccably done. I can't tell you too much about this one because I have not read it yet. But just in case you're like, Becca, duh, I've read the 9 books on your list. They're all great. We all know they're great. Tell us something we don't know. Hopefully you don't know this one. This is definitely one I'm keeping my eye on. It has been very popular as indie. All the reviews I've seen coming out of it and all the comparisons I've seen are all of books that I love. So I have my eye on you, Greenwich and Lennox. Book 2 has already been indie released and that one's been acquired as well. That one's called Duskbound. I don't know if that one's coming out soon after or if it's going to be much later. I have a feeling the first 2 of these books might come out pretty quickly, but I haven't actually checked, so I could be completely lying to you. And then there's a spin-off in the same world as well, which I don't believe has been traditionally acquired yet, although I can definitely see it being if it hasn't already. That one's called The Ascended, but from what I've heard, it is important to read Riftborn first before diving into The Ascended, which I think is set in the same world but is a spin-off. I think you're going to ruin my life in like the best way possible. So yeah, if you wanted my prediction for a series coming up that I think you should be prioritizing picking up, again, if you've only got so many pre-orders you can make or only so many new books that you want to add, if you've got a very long TBR and you don't want to add loads to it, but you've got some room to add some, you want to look at what new books are coming out, you want to be interested in, this is definitely one that I would recommend you check out. And that is 10 God tier romantasy books, or I guess 9 God tier romantasy books and one I expect to be God tier, that I think you should be prioritizing reading in 2026. I would love to know if there's a book I haven't mentioned that I should be prioritizing reading in 2026. It can be from any genre, but the main ones I read are fantasy romance and dark romance and contemporary romance. So if you have any recommendations in those genres, let me know down below. Seriously, leave me a comment. I want to build out my TBR with your recommendations, your God tier reads that I should be prioritizing reading right now. Tell me them. But hopefully that was helpful to some of you who might be like me, facing an overwhelming TBR and not knowing what to pick up next. And if you've already read them all, then you've got fantastic taste. That's everything from me today, so other than that, I will see you in the next one.